Welcome to another edition of Mr. Long Island's Search for Truth and Beauty. My name is Michael Watt, your host for this episode, and today my guest is Greg Fitzgerald from the Long Island Robotics Competition. Greg, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
What we're going to discuss today is keeping in line with what we do with Mr. Long Island's Search for Truth and Beauty. We explore the truth that Long Island needs to hear, and we also discuss the various beautiful things about Long Island that make it such a special place. So Greg, thank you very much for joining us today. And we're going to discuss the Long Island Robotics Competition. I don't know if that's the official name for it, but that'll be the name now. But tell us a little bit about the robotics competition.
Okay. Well, first, a couple of acronyms.
Okay.
The competition was founded about 25 years ago by an inventor in New Hampshire, and he named it for inspiration and respect for science and technology first. FRC is the first robotics competition. That's a high school level competition where on March 28th and 29th at Hofstra's Arena, we'll have 50 teams from 47 from Long Island, one from Brazil, and one from each Pennsylvania and Maryland.
Wow.
Competing for 2 days. In tandem with each other, in cooperation with three teams against three teams, and those the composition of those teams rotates about every half hour.
Okay.
And I have, as a judge for the last 5 years, I have seen this change kids' lives.
Really?
Right. It's changed their priorities, it's changed their career focus, and certainly their educational and career decisions.
Well, let's get back to that segment. I want to kind of do a little backstory. When we say robotics, now I think of a robot, I think of Rosie from the Jetsons or R2, T2, whatever that guy was from Star Wars, and the guy who yelled "Danger," Will Robinson on Lost in Space. What are we talking about with robotics? Just generally speaking, what do we mean when we say robotics?
Each year, let's talk the high school program.
Okay.
Each year in early January, the teams will learn what their robot has to accomplish.
Okay.
And typically it's an athletic related event. In prior years it was shooting basketballs. Last year it was throwing frisbees through targets. A couple of years ago, it was kicking a soccer ball through a goal. So the robot has to be designed wirelessly to navigate to the basketball, let's say, secure it, put it in a firing mechanism, perhaps use optical sensors to gauge the distance and the throwing strength to the basket, and then shooting.
Okay.
That's challenging enough. But as I mentioned, there are alliances of three teams rotating about every half hour or an hour against three teams. Okay. So you have a total of six robots, up to 6 feet high and 120 pounds, trying to either play offense or play defense. So each team will accumulate points, each alliance will accumulate points, and you will carry your point accrual through the day, and the largest number of points accrued wins for that day. Now, that's only one of, I think it's 25 different awards we give out, and most of them are not determined by the point scoring.
Okay.
They're determined by indications of leadership on the team, team spirit, outreach into the community, as well as some award for creative engineering approach. Maybe the gearing or the wiring harness was especially unique. So the judges, who are comprised of techies and non-techies, delve into those things over the course of the 2 days by interviewing the teammates.
I want to get back to the whole teammate approach and the team approach and the challenges or problem-solving aspects of the competition. But also, I mean, Long Island, we tout ourselves as a high-tech region, and high-tech is a big umbrella under which a lot of things fall. Robotics isn't just a robot scurrying about. It's doing business. It's let's talk to us a little bit about why it's important that these kids are learning about robotics.
The typical team on the middle school level is 10 kids,
right,
and a couple of adult mentors. And the adults are just there to give guidance, and the kids do the work. On the high school level, you'll have teams as large as 45 or 50 with 3 or 4 adult mentors. And when you realize that the high school team only has 6 weeks to design and test and finalize their robot design, to me, it's like herding cats.
Right.
If you've ever tried to make a cat do something, no. So the teams have to coalesce so that leadership comes to the fore.
Okay.
Communications is very important, precise communications, identifying the skills of each member of the team and facing that off against the task at hand.
Okay.
Now, that may be somebody's in charge of software, somebody's in charge of the wireless connection, somebody's in charge of fundraising. Because on the high school program, it costs an average of $6,000 a year just to enter the competition,
Just to enter.
plus the cost for the robot.
Okay.
So you've got teams spending, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000, and increasingly, school districts are not supporting that. So,
Well, let's talk about that for a second. There's 126, give or take, school districts on Long Island.
Right.
Roughly how many high school teams are fielded?
last year was 47.
Okay, that's pretty significant. That's
Yeah.
about 25%.
Right.
And is there a percentage, roughly, how many of the school districts fund the cost of this participation?
Yeah, I've tried to find that out. It's certainly less than a third.
Less than a third.
Right.
And the interesting thing about my father was an educator. He taught elementary school, and one of his bugaboos was the emphasis on sports that you really didn't play beyond high school, like baseball, or football, or volleyball, or things that you wouldn't necessarily get the gang together. Here you have an element where the young people who participate are learning life skills that will serve them well throughout their, regardless of whether or not they go into anything robotic related, will serve them well.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of ironic that they have to raise the money themselves to participate in this, where a kid maybe on an athletic team or in the drama department doesn't.
Yeah, right. Well, that's all part of the life lesson. As I mentioned, leadership skills, communication skills, and fundraising. So the typical team is not a bunch of high-tech nerds.
Okay.
It's people who come together to accomplish a task in a very, very challenging, compressed time frame.
Also in a very competitive environment, which is
Yeah.
very much like the business community.
That's right.
Yeah.
I tell you, I've been judging for 5 years on the high school level, and at the end of the 2-day competition, number one, I'm exhausted driving home.
Right.
Because it's such a thrilling experience. And number two, I'm very confident in the future of this country because these kids are the future elected officials, the future business leaders, the future community leaders. And the statistics bear out the fact that participants in the robotics programs are much more likely to go to college, much more likely to be involved in their community, much more likely to go into engineering, and that is the future leadership of this country.
It's also something that's sorely needed. Not only Long Island, like I said, is a high-tech region, but there's a tremendous amount of concern about the engineering positions that aren't being filled on Long Island. There was a venture capitalist who had a software company. He had to go into the city because he couldn't fulfill the jobs. Do you see this robotics competition giving these high school students the skill sets they need?
Well, in my opinion, and this isn't reflective of anyone else but my opinion, the typical guidance counselor is subjected to a couple of different pressure points. Number one is mom and dad saying, Mikey's going to go to college. And number two is some sort of incentive or motivation to place as high a percent in college as he or she can. That's not necessarily consistent with the student's capabilities and motivation. BOCES offers some awesome programs, and there are apprenticeship programs, that will really help the high school student that's not meant for college to find and to gain some traction in a career. So, I think that the one statistic that I had heard a couple of years ago was that the community of former Grumman subcontractors
Right.
that survives today has reinvented themselves. Maybe it's a sheet metal shop, maybe it's a heavy metal, fabricator. But there are over 1,200 entry-level jobs going begging on Long Island
Wow.
for entry-level machinists.
Wow.
Paying $30,000 to $34,000 a year to start.
Entry level. And this is something the young men and women can do, not necessarily right out of high school, but maybe through the trade programs. I know John Lombardo over at Suffolk Community has been advocating or pushing for more advocating of young men and women who maybe college, traditional four-year liberal arts school isn't for them. And you're right, that the school districts are measured by the percentage of their graduates who go on to college, and that may not necessarily be in the best interest of
the student or of the Long Island business community.
Now, you touched on something before. You said these aren't necessarily geeks or kids who are robotically, whatever the stereotype might be. You said there's a very high percentage of young women who are involved in this program.
Yeah, last year, 32% of participants around the country were female.
Wow.
Now, in my experience, in the middle school, let me back up. In the high school program, there are 47 teams from Long Island. So if you multiply that by an average of maybe 20 per team, that's 1,000 people, if my math is right. On the middle school level, there are over 110 schools.
Wow.
No, not schools, 110 teams.
Okay.
On the high school level, they're anchored in high schools. On the middle school level, the majority are anchored in Girl Scout troops.
Really? That's very interesting.
Right. That's right. And I'm wondering where the Boy Scouts are.
That's very interesting. Now, you had mentioned a little bit, you're very involved with Rotary International, which does great work in the local community, both locally and on an international level. Right. And you saw the value in getting, well, you tell me a little bit about the decision process.
I think most Long Islanders have heard of the challenges in certain parts of the Huntington Station community.
Okay.
And with the rise in gang involvement and other, involvements that aren't necessarily consistent with how we'd like to live our lives, the Rotary Club of Huntington saw an opportunity to redirect some of their funding. Typically, we raise maybe $60,000 or $70,000 a year and give it out to a few dozen nonprofits. A couple of years ago, we decided that we would change that mentality and have fewer beneficiaries, but with a bigger dollar impact. And we saw the Huntington Station community as being an area that we wanted to focus that effort on. So we approached the school district. The superintendent was enormously in favor of the program. So he was very supportive. We designated $6,000 a year for 2 years, so $12,000, which was a major commitment to get robotics teams into Huntington and Huntington Station and get them off the ground. And we sat down with the administrators and we said, we want you to reach into Huntington Station, into the most challenged areas, to expose these kids to this potentially life-changing experience.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, why it's so important to the community. And I think it's great that you're doing this in the Huntington Station. Certainly belies the stereotype that it's only, academically inclined students. Why is it so important that, well, there's actually two components to it. The problem-solving challenges, the teamwork challenges, anybody who participates in that is going to do well in the corporate world beyond high school, college. But also talk a little bit about the importance of the sciences and technology to the business fabric of Long Island.
Well, my first job out of college, I worked for Grumman.
Okay.
And at that time, Grumman had 34,000 employees on Long Island, very good paying jobs. And when they, as they were bought out by Northrop,
Right.
And of course now their employee force has dissipated down to under 1,000.
Wow.
And during right now, Long Island Jewish Health System is the #1 employer on Long Island, and with pretty good, pay for which filters into the business community. But until LIJ became, I think, Walbaum's or
Right.
some other relatively low-paying industry was the #1 employer on the island. So just take a look at the dramatic impact of losing 33,000 jobs, high-paying jobs, and replacing them with retail clerks.
Well, that's one of the more frustrating aspects about Long Island, because you're right. There was a time Grumman was the big dog, 30,000 plus employees. In the early 90s, when they cut back and the whole defense thing blew up, a lot of those former Grummanites that you alluded to earlier went on and started their own businesses, and that was 20 years ago. Now they're starting to sunset a little bit. And the challenge, the Long Island municipalities and all the different layers of government that we have are predicated on people making some nice salaries. And when your largest employer is service related as opposed to manufacturing, you're going to have a warm front meeting a cold front sooner or later. So I think that's why the robotics and the manufacturing that's associated with it, because the brain power that we have on Long Island needs to be doing things that generate a lot of value.
Yeah, and I think the manufacturing segment is seen by many experts to be a critical part of the local economy to get some traction and to improve the business community.
And there's still a significant manufacturing industry on Long Island. And when we're talking about manufacturing, if you're manufacturing a commodity, you're not going to do it on Long Island. If you're making hairnets or something that you can be made anywhere, doing that on Long Island can be problematic. But if you're creating robots or robotic arms or anything, the devices that are used in a robotic process, and I'll give you a quick anecdote. Back in the late 80s, I was writing about manufacturing for CMP Media, and I got invited to the warehouse on Route 101 in Yaphank. And at the time, I was afraid I was going off the end of the earth. I mean, it was so far out. But they showed us the robots that were used to take the goods off, and this is 87, 88, take the goods off the truck and put them on the shelves, 24/7, no lights on, all computerized. And that's why it's so important. I mean, be able to cut the cost of production and help businesses grow.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody would think that robots are going to be less important as a component of our manufacturing capability. So it's going to be there. It's whether Long Island is going to be able to take the lead, both in setting up the actual businesses as well as supplying the workforce.
Right, and the key is to create the jobs and the companies that specialize in high-end, high-tech goods that really require more brain power than manpower. And that's where the money is, and that's really very necessary for Long Island.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about, now you're a banker by trade, so your involvement may be a little seem odd in this. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in this.
Well, about 5 or 6 years ago, one of my clients was an engineer, still is an engineer, and he was involved in this from the inception about 15 years ago. And as we got to know each other, he suggested that I may really enjoy this involvement.
Okay.
And he was absolutely right. I thanked him just this morning for having introduced me to this involvement, because, as I said, it's the competition itself is thrilling, and when I'm driving home at the end of the day, I'm feeling really good about the future of this country.
And one of the things about Long Island is 95, 98% of the businesses on Long Island are decidedly non-glamorous. You drive around Industrial Park, you really don't know what those people do, but they do well, otherwise they couldn't afford to stay here. Do you foresee the business community, or do you think the business community should be more involved in sponsoring these things and underwriting these things? Because this is where their backbench is coming from.
I completely agree. The School Business Partnerships of Long Island, that's another acronym, SBPLI,
Right.
is the local nonprofit that was founded about 15 years ago by Fred Breithaupt, who died recently. And its main role is to sponsor these competitions.
Right.
Now, the $6,000 entry fee or whatever other fee is paid to FIRST, the national nonprofit. SBPLI does not get a nickel of it.
Okay.
So it's to get right to the point, SBPLI is in serious financial shape.
Okay.
We were in the red last year. We are 3 or 4 times in the red this year. And we've already been talking to FIRST to indicate that we may not be able to conduct anything after this year.
Wow.
And that would be an absolute tragedy.
Well, especially in light of your earlier you mentioned there's 1,200 jobs that are going begging. I mean, this is where you plant the seeds so that moving forward you have the men and women who can take these jobs and do well at them. So it would behoove the business community to kind of start investing. Man, I hope it's not too late if they can.
Well, we do have some major sponsors. I'm going to run the risk of excluding one of them, but Grumman participates, BAE Systems, Festo, and Motorola Solutions, and a few others. But the total budget exceeds $200,000.
Wow.
And most of that goes, just about all of that. SBPLI is a volunteer organization, no overhead. So all of that goes to supporting the competitions. And I think that other local businesses should step up to contribute, not the $10,000 or $20,000 that those major sponsors contribute, but maybe $500. I mean, if we had enough, we would be able to close the gap.
Okay.
We're over $50,000 in the red this year.
Wow.
And that is not sustainable. So people,
which is really unfortunate considering how crucial robotics and things like this are to the sustainability of Long Island as a manufacturing community.
That's right. I mean, our elected officials apparently now are tackling the affordable housing issue.
Right.
So that hopefully that will progress, but we have to give job opportunities. Right. To our youngsters to stay on Long Island.
And to get them thinking now in terms of, when they're 17, 18 years old about their future. And going back to what I was saying before, with these nondescript companies, I'm 18 years old, I'm driving by the Hauppauge Industrial Park. I have no idea the kinds of opportunities that are available to me there. Sure. Tell us a little bit about the event is at the end of March?
The high school event is the last Friday and Saturday in March, the 28th and 29th. I would encourage any viewer to come anytime between 8:30 and 4:30 in the afternoon on either of those days.
Okay.
Spend a half an hour and just absorb the vibe. I mean, there are going to be thousands of people packing the basketball arena.
Really?
The field of play is 26 by 50 feet. And all of the rest of the floor is individual pit areas. So each team has a 10 by 10 foot pit area. And people can come and walk around, visit their team, visit their high school team.
Okay. Do spectators come and root their high schools on? Or?
Well, I'm one of the more popular judges each morning because I come with a box of earplugs.
Okay.
Because it's not the robots that are noisy. It's everybody cheering everybody else on.
So it's a very exciting environment and lots of enthusiasm.
Yeah. The middle school program, the finals are March 2nd, which is a week from this Saturday. 10 days,
yeah.
And that's held at Longwood High School in Middle Island.
Okay, and that's open to the public? The public come down?
They're both open.
If somebody wanted information prior to that, if they were interested in this or they wanted to find out about being a part of a team for next year, where would they go?
sbpli.org.
Okay.
Just Google SBPLI or FIRST Robotics.
Okay.
The latter will take you to the FIRST, website, and then you can drill down to find teams in Long Island.
Okay.
But you can go to either place.
I'm sorry, the winners of this tournament, You said there's
right.
4 winners?
Yeah, there are 4 or 5 winners. I don't recall
Okay.
specifically, but again, only 2 of those are decided on the field of play.
Okay.
The other is one of the others is what's called a chairman's award, where the team has to do a research project, make a presentation to a group of judges, and so all 4 or 5 of these will have tickets to the national finals in St. Louis about a month after that.
About a month. So, do they bring their robot to the finals, or
Oh,
do they
yeah.
have to build a new?
Oh, no. They have they have their robot designed.
Okay.
And it'll be shipped out. One of the shipping companies, I believe it's FedEx. Pardon me if I'm wrong, but contributes all shipping costs gratis.
Wow. And then and they'll go out. Those 4 or 5 teams will go to St. Louis to compete on a national level.
Yeah, and apparently there are like 300 teams. I mean, there are 43 other regional competitions outside of Long Island.
Okay.
Which let me back up a bit about the importance of this being able to continue on Long Island.
Okay.
We have a capacity limit of 50 teams.
Okay.
The priority is rookie teams first, Long Island teams filling in second, and then off Long Island teams if the spots are available.
Okay.
Okay. However, if the 2015 competition goes away because we can't afford to fund it, our 47 Long Island teams will have to apply to Manhattan,
Okay. Wow.
New Jersey, and Connecticut.
Wow.
They will have to leave the island for any regional competition.
Wow.
And that is if they have the spots available.
And for a region that touts itself as a high-tech region, for us to not be able to field a robotic competition, I think would be embarrassing.
Yeah, embarrassing.
Or a shame. Maybe embarrassing is too strong. It would be a shame.
For those of us who know the power of it,
Right.
it's probably frustrating also.
Very frustrating. All right, so that's terrific. I appreciate your time. Long Island, as I said, is known for being a high-tech region. It's also known for something else, and we do this, I usually do at the beginning of the program, but we launched right into the robotics. Long Island's also known for its pizza. And we're taking up a survey of our guests. Where's your favorite pizza place on Long Island? Where would you go and bring people from out of town just to show off how good the pizza is?
On Long Island?
Yeah.
Rose's Pizza in Huntington.
Roses in Huntington. Okay, all different kinds, or basic pie?
Now
or-
I expect a free slice next time I go in there.
Well, that's up to you. We don't, but that's very interesting. Roses in Huntington.
And how
Okay.
about yours?
It depends. So you're looking for a basic pie, you're going to go to Mangi's in North Babylon. Pie by Salvatore in Bayshore that has a great thin crust vegetable pizza that it's a once a month treat. And you know it's good when because I'll drive past about 10 or 15 pizza places on the way there.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Greg, this has been fascinating. Good luck with the competition this year.
I hope to see you there.
I'll be there. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. And I think it's really important to Long Island that we embrace not only robotics, but the young men and women who are willing to put all that time and effort. And to me, the really important part is they learn problem-solving skills, teamwork skills, and they also learn about competition, how it can be a healthy thing to make them better.
And compromise, in the furtherance and achievement of a goal, of a common goal, you have to compromise.
And to me, the best part is what you said about being thrilled at the end of the competition.
Yeah.
You really feel good about the future of Long Island and for America, because these young men and women are very smart, very hardworking, and it's
Amen.
very encouraging.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you very much, Greg. Nice
Thank you,
chatting with
Mike.
you.
Sure.
Take care. That's it for another episode of Mr. Long Island Search for Truth and Beauty. Thank you for joining us. Have a good evening.